So I'm going to continue sort of speaking or riffing off of a podcast that I listened to last week or so. And this was on, if you want to find it, the way to find it is in your Apple Podcasts or other podcasts. I don't know what other ones you might use. It's called Light Up the Couch is the category of this podcast. And it's from this professor of counseling psychology at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Her name is Tanya Israel. So, and I'm picking, as we often do, I'm picking up a couple of paragraphs and I'm sort of taking them a little more into what we're doing here in reflective meditation. So, but Dr. Israel says, I think it's helpful to do an assessment when we click into our fight, flight, or freeze mode to first of all recognize what's going on for us, and that happens because we perceive a threat and we know our bodies respond to any threat as though it's a saber-toothed tiger or whatever. The house is on fire, or that's a very Buddhist term. Maybe I shouldn't use that one because the Buddha uses that a bit metaphorically, that all our houses are on fire. But I mean, our house is actually on fire, not metaphorically, or, somebody is actually threatening our bodies, our limbs, our life. But our bodies react often when, we feel threatened as though it's a life and death kind of threat. So, and this term that's common in our languaging these days is I feel safe, I feel unsafe. And what she's saying, and what I really appreciated, is that it's really important to really assess, am I unsafe or do I just feel unsafe? So, um, because it's highly likely that you're feeling unsafe, but you actually are not unsafe. But you're unsettled, is the word she used. We're not settled, we're unsettled. Our nervous systems are unsettled. Um, and it's so important to know this and to come to, um, to just understand that one question, am I actually unsafe? Because if we're actually unsafe, we want to get ourselves out of the situation. We want to, you know, our fight or flight mechanisms in our body, mind are useful then. We got to get out, however that works in that situation. Um, but if we assess, and this is happening, I don't know, 99.9% of the time, I have no idea the statistics. But if we're feeling unsafe, but we're not unsafe, then what we need to do is really different. And that's that we need to settle our nervous system. And that's often no small feat. It sounds easy conceptually, but it can be hard to do and harder for some of us than others. And often the suggestion and actually even the shorthand is deep breathe, breathe, deep breathe. And that is very helpful for most of the people, most of the time. Or maybe it's like it's time to physically ground or, feel your feet on the ground, etc. Um, and, it's so important to calm our nervous system, however that may work for you, for me. Um, it might because taking a deep breath, well, for me, it's just not adequate. I don't know about for you. Perhaps it's a good start, but it's not adequate. It's not enough. Um, and I'm guessing for some people it really is enough. Um, and like for myself, it just takes me a while. Once I determine I really am safe, it sort of like takes time for my body mind to come back into balance, back into homeostasis is the word that's used. And I can't seem to wish it or rush it. Um, I just know myself well enough to know that it takes time and I gotta pause and not make any moves if I can avoid it. Again, if the house is on fire, I'm running out. I'm not waiting around to settle my nervous system. I'm heading on out and I'm calling 911. But that's not what's happening most all of the time. Most all of the time, I just need to kind of sort of slowly settle myself. And um, and that takes a while for me. And I even have discussed this that I'm slow at this, and and my nerves and my blood pressure, by the way, goes up under stress because I'm taking my blood pressure. And so I've even discussed this with, my naturopath, and she's prescribed something pharmaceutically to help lower my nervous system. That's what I need sometimes, not always. Um, but what I'm suggesting by offering you that example is that you become more and more aware of how your nervous system functions, because a high level of activation for very long is not healthy for any of us. So, but coming back to what we're doing in reflective meditation, one of the key things we're learning, one of the key capacities is called discernment, the English translation, discernment. And this is one place where it's so important, because once we can actually discern, yes, in this situation, I am safe. My survival is not threatened. Once we have made that discernment, we have choices. And some of these choices can only be figured out when the prefrontal cortex of our brain, that more complex thinking part of our brain, um, is engaged. And when our fight or flight part of the brain is engaged, that prefrontal cortex is not engaged. So we have to calm things down. We have to get to that capacity, to get to that part of our brain, however you want to think of it. It's both, where we can um, where we know we're safe enough, there's no imminent danger, and we can pause and decide how to proceed. That might include leaving the situation, but it probably doesn't include flying out of the house and calling 911. Might include calling a friend. Um, so back to meditation. You're safe during meditation most of the time. Of course, something could happen while you're meditating that's unsafe, but it's highly unlikely. And hopefully, you have things set up where it's extremely unlikely. Um, um, Hopefully, you have found a way to have, I like to call it the safe cocoon of meditation, where I can really allow in some of the situations in my life that are unsettling, or not, maybe I shouldn't say allow in, maybe I should say not just that, not block out. If they come, they come. But there is, I think, for all of us, certain ways that we settle in meditation, and that will really balance that out. Even though the unsettling things are coming in, you actually are safe, you know you're safe, and there are these more calming things that actually happen, be it the breath, be it other states of mind. And this is part of why we ask you questions about these states of mind when you speak up, so you become more aware of them. So, summary of this, my thinking on this. I encourage you that when you think or feel or perceive, I am unsafe, but you know that your life and limb is not at risk, that you really consider these words, because this is the language that's common in our these days, in my world anyway. I am unsafe. But when you hear in your mind the thought, I am unsafe, that can be really a sign or a signal to discern, am I really unsafe? And then when no, hey, I'm okay. I'm actually okay. Then you can settle down and you can discern the most skillful and appropriate words that you might want to say, or perhaps restrain, or perhaps edit a bit and adapt. And you can discern the most skillful and appropriate actions you might want to take. Because, when you're feeling unsafe, maybe something not so great is going on. And so you can discern the most skillful and appropriate actions to take, or maybe to restrain, or again, maybe to adapt. I'm back to talking about the Eightfold Path here. Skillful actions, skillful words. That can happen when we are more settled down. And that is what we are cultivating. So look at that, perfect timing.